Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Everybody's a Comedian, where we get all up in comedy's business. I am your host, Keith Graber, and with me as my guests are a couple of fellow comedians and comedy friends, Sean Porter and Maria de la Ghetto. Take a virtual bow.
What up, people? What up? What up? What up?
You're good, Keith.
Thanks for having us, Keith.
Yes.
I feel like a lucky gal.
You guys, we're here to talk about your, let's say, ethnic ambiguity and how it pertains to your comedy career, if you want to call it that. I know I've got quotation marks and a huge asterisk around mine. But yeah, let's start out and let's get right down to it. Put all the cards out on the table, and so I'll give ourselves the breakdown of our ethnic background. So Maria, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm mainly Mexican and Filipino with a sprinkle of Chinese in there, according to my mother.
Okay.
So yeah, that's basically it. And then with my dad, so my dad is Mexican, but my mom's Filipino. My dad, I think we're Mexican, so there's obviously like native or indigenous, in there. But they're all born, like the last, I think 5 generations are born in LA. So born and raised in LA. So yeah, that's basically it.
5 gen. Okay. And then Sean Porter.
Keith, my Mexican brother. What is up, man?
Yeah.
I am
how much time do you have? Is that
all this is all of us here. There are no we're all people of color here. No. I was gonna say, Maria, that's just the Spaniards have done a number on your peoples, both Filipinos and Mexicans. I am Blasian, and my mom is Vietnamese and my dad is black. That's what I mainly am, I guess, comprised of.
But I've heard you say there's more to that story, though, right?
There is, because then you take that 23andMe shit, and then you get the pie graph, and then it's like, yo, I'm not like half of anything. Then it's like, it's like sub-Saharan African, which of course, if you're African American, 99% of us of the slave trade came from sub-Saharan Africa, and then I'm Vietnamese. I'm 17% Chinese. I am French, Scandinavian. Basically, all my slave masters, all that stuff. That's where I get all this shit from. But yeah, it's really interesting, man. Like the history of our family, we're very, very, very like just mixed the fuck up. And my ancestry on my dad's side, from New Orleans area, so we have that like Creole, like French, Native American. Like our great grandmother on my father's side was Native American, and so that's why we're all beige and fucking light skinned. Like my dad looks like Colin Powell. That's what my dad looks like.
And
he's beige? He's like beige like you, Keith. Like your Mexican ass.
Is it? I think it's not the Creole, it's the Cajuns that came from Canada.
Came from where?
I believe Canada. So. Yeah, Canada.
Canada. They were displaced like in the 1700s or something, and that's where a lot of the French origin of Cajuns.
Interesting.
Like
New Orleans.
Before the Louisiana Purchase. Now I know, Keith, I know you have a crack team of researchers, so maybe you can fact check me on this. Louisiana Purchase. Before that, Louisiana was just this melting pot of the Spanish, the French colonists, and then you have the Native American indigenous tribes there, and then the African mix. And it was all just this society until then America purchased it.
Yeah, and it's a port. Louisiana, New Orleans is a port city, so
right.
There's that.
Yeah, man, birthplace of jazz.
Yeah, so okay, so I was going to go into who's got the 23andMe shit to back it up. Like, so Maria, have you ever done 23andMe? Have you ever done any kind of genetic testing?
No, I've been meaning to, but we just haven't gotten around to it. And it's also like $100 to tell me what I already know.
Shit, yeah. It's like $2 now. It's $200 now.
You gotta get them on the sales. They send me emails about 50% off.
Yeah, it's expensive. Okay. It's overpriced. Maria's not wrong. You should go in for whatever kind of sale they got going on. But here's the thing. I'm gonna have to put an asterisk on where you said, Maria, what I already know, because that's what 23andMe, that's what they provide. That's the service they provide, is the shit you don't already know. You know, the family secrets. You know, so there's like and it's sometimes it's not always family secrets. That it's not necessarily a family secret. It's more a family unknown. So my ethnic background it's not as quite as diverse. You know, it's a lot of different types of European. Like, is it white or off-white? You know, whatever.
Eggshell white.
Swiss coffee. Yeah, like no, but it's like I'm like 22% Lithuanian or something like that. I'm like 40-something% English/Irish, which is like everybody, you know, that's the main colonizers of the planet. And there's a lot of mixed Europeans, and that's where it starts to get weird. And then I'm 6% Native American. I have what I found on 23andMe is Mexican relatives, and I have Southern European DNA, which adds up to about 6% as well. And so that's where the deduction comes into play. And it's like, well, that, you know, a lot of Latino DNA doesn't break that. They don't give you the breakdown. They don't have those numbers at 23andMe yet. They can't really say, but they can say based on your breakdown, your cocktail of ethnic DNA.
You get the pie graph. Yeah.
What you are. And if you're Mexican, you tend to be, it's almost 50-50 with Southern European and Native American. And,
that's the main. Before you even told me of the cocktail there.
Before Keith even told me that he was Mexican, before he even told me, I was like, bro, you are one do-rag away from being a Puerto Rican. When you told me he was from Philly, look at him. Do-rag and a fucking Yankee hat.
Bro, I like, let's be real. Okay, I got a tan this weekend, so I'm actually on par finally. But yeah, he was like, I was paler than both of y'all. I was like, I can't even claim woman of color right now because I ain't got no damn color on my skin. And so I sat in the sun for 4 hours in San Diego, and I burned, and I regret nothing because finally, oh my gosh.
That's what I'm trying to do this weekend, because I'm yellow as fuck right now. But I get hella tan though over the summer. I just need to get some fucking sun. I don't burn.
That first initial burn, dark. Then you're good.
So Keith is darker than me right now, and I should have my mixed card pulled.
I've had a few wake-up calls with ethnicity in my life, but one of them was the first time I was at like some sort of rave or something, and there was black light. And I'm like, yo, my fingernails are bright as fuck right now. What's going on? You know, like me under black light, I look like you know what I mean? Like you inverse and my fingernails are
right.
And my skin is fucking dark as shit. And I'm like, and everyone else is looking at me like, this is weird. My teeth are yellow, but that's about it. You got something going on in there. You're mystery
That's
brown.
Right. That's right.
So
did you trace where the Mexican comes from? Or is that where the family secrets?
That's the thing. It's the family secrets. And there's, like I said, there's family secrets and there's family unknowns. So the secret is, so my dad never knew his real father, right? He had a stepfather who he loved and took care of him. Great, no problem. And, you know, the stepfather was like Clint Eastwood from Gran Torino, you know, get off my lawn.
Right.
Point of, you know, like I used to stack, whatever, like all the.
Yeah, my dad's the black version of that guy.
Yeah, I try not to excuse the racism of the past, but I understand it, and what can you do? You know what I mean? He used to tell me I had dirty elbows when I was a kid, you know. As a child, like I was literally a child, he would say it to my face.
That's what he was, so that was him telling you were Mexican. That was him telling you something else. Legit.
Like, yeah, wink and a nod, but guess what? Yeah.
Right.
My dad's the opposite. Or, well, no, he's the same. My dad's Mexican, but for the longest time, on his birth certificate, it says Caucasian. And my dad's light skinned. Mm-hmm. But like that racism that is ingrained in Americans, like if you can pass, they like, oh, I'm American. Yes. And then, and he served in the military. And while he wasn't like racist, like, oh, whatever, there's still that implicit racism where he's just like, I'm not Mexican. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, oh my God, I just gave my government name. Cut that out.
What you got a record or some shit? You got rap?
Yo, man.
Why can't we know your government name? What are you talking about?
Because
gotta keep it PLG.
Yeah. It's just funnier because people are like, oh my God, Ghetto, is that your real name? I'm like, yes, pendeja, that's my real name. Like
when I wear that visor with the hair, people are like, is that your real hair?
Yeah.
Is that your real brain? Yeah.
But on a real tip though, like he grew up like a privileged white kid. He grew up, even though like where he grew up in LA was predominantly, because it was predominantly Italians and Jews at the time. His family and one other family were like the only Mexicans in the neighborhood. And then eventually became hood. But like,
that changed. Yeah, right.
Yeah, but my dad, like, and my mom like thought he was white. She was in for a surprise after that.
Right.
But yeah, and so I grew up with that implicit racism of like, oh, I'm not Mexican and blah blah blah. Like, I didn't identify with being even Latina till well into my like adulthood. I would say maybe
into your adulthood.
Late. I'd say maybe 1920. So late teens, early 20s. But I really did not identify with being Mexican or Latina in any way until I was and of course because people saw me as Asian, or Islander or whatever, but I got teased by the Mexicans.
I'll ask you this, Maria. I don't know if you had the similar experience that I had growing up. I grew up with like indirect racism is what I tell people. Like I grew up with people, I joke about it up top of my set about how I'm an undercover black guy. So no one had any idea. Mm-hmm. So I grew up with the indirect racism of being, I grew up partly in the Valley and then partly in Silver Lake. And so when I was in the Valley with my dad in Sherman Oaks, I went to a private school. So I'm around my white friends. I'm around a lot of Jewish kids. I'm around rich white kids. And so playing baseball, little league, football, whatever it was, I'm like, we're fucking 8. Where are you getting this racist shit from? Like, where are you getting all these? Like, how is that even what happened? Like, so I grew up around that, and then them finding out that I'm black when I'm getting into fights and shit and punching kids. Like, so I grew up with that indirect racism, and then my girlfriend, just real quick, interesting about her. And you guys have met her. She's Mexican, but she grew up in Orange County, and she has sandy blonde hair. And she's from a part of Mexico where everyone's, blue-eyed and very light-skinned. And so she grew up with that indirect racism, being the only Mexican family in Orange County. And so I don't know if you had a similar experience of like people not knowing or just running their mouths around you and you having to fucking surprise them and check them and shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, because the thing is, again, like, they assumed I was Asian. I would hear it at like family parties, but they were like my mom's friends. So we weren't actually related, but it was all the like Filipino moms that were married to their Navy husbands or military husbands. So they would and all the mixed kids running around, so I would hear that kind of stuff about like Mexicans and, whatever. And then from my Mexican side,
whatever wasn't around, that's what we're talking about.
Like,
right.
I mean, it's just so wild. Like thinking, you look back on it and you're like hearing the Mexicans talk smack. And this is even worse. Like, because my Mexican family was from the US per se, like, like quote unquote US, they would talk smack about other Mexicans. So it was like
whitewash. Right.
Yeah,
you guys are the whitewash Mexicans.
What is going on? Like, y'all really think it's better because you got some papeles? Like, calm down, because they call it like, tienes papeles, you got your papers. Yes. Right. So it was just
within the culture, there's colorist.
Yeah.
You whites did a fucking number on us.
On a real tip. Y'all colonized.
You guys did a number.
Went deep.
no,
only
no, but like
88%
that colorism
culpable.
That's
No,
right.
but
That's
okay.
right.
But Sean, to your point though about how I look Puerto Rican, like it was an ongoing family joke for so long because we were always a little bit dark skinned that we had a Puerto Rican mailman, and yeah,
Yeah.
and here's the thing.
Did you say you got bullied? You got bullied as a kid because
Yeah, okay. So
right?
you were saying about how the 8-year-olds know about racism, like they learn
Right.
it. They learn it from all the assholes around them that raised them.
All learn.
And
Parents
I remember,
yeah.
so in Philly, it's very tribalist. There's the neighborhoods are segregated. I mean, the streets are segregated. Like I remember, the block I lived on was at war with the next block, and they're like, you went over there? You went over and talked to that kid on that block? Like you get your ass, and so there was one time when I was walking around my neighborhood or whatever. I was just going to visit a friend or something, and I walked out around some pizza joint where kids would congregate, and like 10 white kids chased me because they thought I was Puerto Rican. And at the time I was like, oh, obviously I'm running from 10 kids. And I was like, well, wait, should I stop and tell them I'm not Puerto Rican? And I'm like, is that wrong if I do that? Like, it feels weird. Like it feels not right, so.
Should I stop and tell them this is a big misunderstanding?
Yeah. Like, hey guys, I'm just.
That was me with Samoans. People are like, "Are you Samoan?" I'm like, "What's a Samoan?" Mm-hmm. I didn't know what a Samoan was.
Is that a Girl Scout cookie? Yeah. What the hell?
Yeah. I never even heard of the Girl Scout cookies till I was like in high school. I don't know what kind of weird like rock I lived under and I grew up in LA. You would think I would have known about these things, but yeah, didn't know what a Samoan was, but people always ask me that. And then like one person, I think, what was it? It was a guy who was Tongan. I think I learned what a Tongan one was when I was like 18. He was like, "You're from Tonga?" And I was like, what is that? I don't. And it's wild. Like just how.
And I think that's right. I think that's the interesting thing about like both of us growing up in LA is that, and especially ethnically ambiguous. So you have a few things. You learn different languages. It's almost like you're bilingual, and you learn how to navigate through LA. Like it is a cultural melting pot, but it's also a classist pot as well. So not only are you mixing with other cultures and learning and Armenian friends and Persian friends and all that, but then also just a half mile that way are the $2.5 million homes, and that in a half a mile that way, you're at John's Market, liquor store. It's the hood. So and then you see the classism amongst the kids too. So that was like very interesting. Like in LA, it's both those.
I shop at John's. Like I'm not trying to pull rank. Like I shop at John's. Dude, when you shop at John's is basically the supermarket for the new Colossus, the poem on the Statue of Liberty. Like all those people, that's who shops at John's. Like
that's who shops at John's.
Everyone that's you're poor.
I remember my white friend, he transplanted out here from where is he from? From Ohio, because they're all from fucking Ohio, Keith. And I remember he was brand new, and we're on the phone. I was like, look, he was lost. I was like, look, if you're driving and you're lost and you see a Gelson's, you're okay. You're fine. You driving, you see a John's, keep driving. keep driving until you see Gelson's, you're good.
It's not that bad.
I know.
One thing I wanted to mention though is like we talked about the family secrets. That's where you find out like my grandma fucked around a little bit, and there was
okay, Granny, get it.
Yeah, get you some, but it was a deadbeat dad situation, and that was buried, and that was also premarital, etc. So that was buried. But you also find the unknowns, the family unknowns, and by that I mean, I grew up thinking I was mostly German. My last name is German. My dad has a German ancestor. And so I did 23andMe. What'd you think I expected? And how much German do you think is in there? There's like, I think like 12% Northern European.
Wow.
Right. You're more Mexican. You're more Mexican than German,
and
right?
I am German. And the thing that people don't realize is with all this sort of word of mouth stuff, with your DNA and your background, your ethnicity, etc. So there's someone to be like, oh yeah, we're German, but you don't know where that German ancestor came from. Did he go to Germany from somewhere else? And therefore he was German.
Right.
He was, like we have Italian Americans. And if one of those people moved to Argentina and said, yeah, I'm American, like, oh my,
right.
You don't know like where all that, how that jumps around, how far that jumps around.
I think that is the fucking beauty of 23andMe over the last couple years. Just the personal anecdotes I have of it is really like, I think, helping to end this racism shit. Cause I don't know how many white friends I've had took the 23andMe and like you're talking about those secrets and learning that they're like 9% Black, 12% Mexican, 15% Asian, and like all these secrets. And like I have so many white friends that found out they're like I'm 7% Black, what? And then all it opens up all these. I'm like, because these white women have been fucking around on these white men for years, but they just could not say shit about it. They just could not say shit about it.
Yeah,
white grandma was going to the Black part of like they were getting it in. It was just taboo back then. And like, so now you're starting to see all this shit come out in 23andMe. I fucking love it.
Well, yeah. It says more about our culture as a society, especially our religiously culture as a society, that nobody adheres to. It's do as I say, not as I do, for every single human being that ever lived in the history of mankind. So, I don't know. For me as an atheist, I'm like, shut the fuck up with all that shit, because nobody's living up to it. Just shut the fuck up with all that shit, But that's what happens is we only have all these multi-ethnic situations because people are sneaking around. And it's so weird that's like, I don't know, it's sort of like, it's great. I think that the future of the human race is multi-ethnic. I think
fuck yeah.
Yeah, hundreds of years from now, everyone looks like us. Some sort of caramel, Swiss coffee, skin tone.
Absolutely.
Hundreds of years from now, Keith, we're all going to be gray. Because that's where we came from. We were going to evolve into what.
Okay, that's what save the conspiracy theories for the end of the episode.
My bad. Okay,
we'll step up into that.
Aliens yet? Okay, all right. Not that we're
I
all
saw this video though about a bunch of people who took 23andMe or whichever one it was, and it's just like, it's great to have like pride in your culture, yada yada. And I'm definitely that person. Like like anybody. Like I'm proud to be Filipino. I'm proud to be Mexican. But like, where is the line of like cultural, like just not so much focusing on it? So these people were like taking all these tests, and one person was like, I'm 100% what did they say, like Turkish. And then like, because the history, they're like, someone else who was, I think, Armenian, had like this kind of like not hatred, but just like a disdain, like a subconscious disdain, because I think, was it Turkey that invaded Armenia, and then the genocide,
Armenian
and
genocide,
all that. And then they find out that they're mixed with both. And it's like, well, what do you think? Like that we just, that people are mixed.
That's what I'm saying.
Intermingling for thousands of years.
Right. That's what I think 23andMe is helping out to do, is to like fucking burst that bubble.
Hell
like,
yeah.
Oh, we thought we were this entire time. Holy shit. We have this, and this.
But that's
changed my whole frame of view.
That's also something that I don't think people realize, is that pride and shame are two sides of the same coin.
Right.
Like if you're going to take pride in something you have literally no relationship with except for your, DNA, like, my ancestors, my great triple great grandfather was Abraham Lincoln's friend or whatever. Like, how are you going to take pride in that?
Yeah.
Not be ashamed of all the other things that went down along the way with the other ancestors.
Right.
You can't just tap the pride a little bit and be like, I'm this.
Right.
Okay. I'm just this.
Right.
Fuck it. I'm me. Deal with me. That's it.
Keith, have you been hit up by the relatives yet? I think that's the other cool part about 23andMe is that all these relatives.
I reached out to them on 23andMe, and
you reach out. I get hit up all the time.
Every single person that I find on 23andMe that has like any sort of DNA that looks like the hole I'm trying to find in my family history, because I know my mom's side is Lithuanian, and I know my mom's side is a lot of the Irish English. And my dad's side is a little bit of the Northern European. And then the other half is this Mexican mix-up stuff that I'm trying to look for. And anyone that has that, that's the person I'm hitting up. Because like the other people, I can see where that it tracks. But I'm trying to find them. And they rarely reply. They're always like, yo, do you want like, are you looking for someone to sign a fucking loan or something?
Yo,
like, what are you doing here?
That's what I would think.
You looking for a cosigner? Yeah, like, no, I'm good.
Also,
I got. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I only found out like recently. I only learned this recently because a friend of mine did the 23andMe. Your siblings won't have the same like percentages. I didn't know that it would come out like that.
It's called it's called recombination.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically like not all DNA breaks down to exactly an exact split. So your parents should be a 50-50 split, but it may be a 48-52 split.
Yeah.
It's rarely that much of a difference. So it's usually like in the what do you call it? Fractional, like 50.5 and 40.
Oh, yeah. But I thought that was fascinating because
it starts to get more pronounced like the further down the lineage you go, and especially with siblings as well. Like that's why you look so much different than each other. Some siblings look identical.
Yeah.
And then I've known twins that don't even look alike. I've had those friends,
Yeah. My sister looks like the more Latina version of me because we look like sisters. But she definitely looks more Latina and I look more Asian. And so I want to take the test to see if I have more of my mom's side and she has more of my dad's. But it's funny because, it's interesting. It's just fascinating.
And that's interesting because mine always changed depending on whose house I was over on the weekend. Because when I'd be over my mom's, she'd be like, oh, see, you're just like your fucking dad. Just like your dad, like, oh, my DNA, oh, that's who I'm realizing. When I'm over with my dad's, I'm like, oh shit, they're gonna be mom.
And I don't think it's like I don't think it's like a Xerox machine. Like the more you make the copies, the worse it is. Right. I don't think it's like that. They call it recombination for a reason. I think your DNA sort of recombines, and then so maybe if you're not an exact 50-50 split of your parents, maybe of your grandparents, for whatever reason they're an actual 25 split, but then your great grandparents might be like, no, it's more of it varies and it's not perfect. And I've encountered this with people who love to challenge whatever I say about any of my ethnic identity, and it goes both ways too. Like white people love to challenge it, like, oh, you're not white enough, and then anyone else is like, oh, really, you're not just a fucking bald straight white guy, but I've said the 12% thing to people and they're like, 12%, what is that even, and I'm like, yo, do the math. It's a great grandparent. Like, I'm Elon Musk because I can divide by 8. Like you're a fucking idiot.
Right.
Well, how do you not? Right. How can you not just see that? Like it's around 12.
Speaking of not being enough.
Yeah.
That's a great segue because I've heard that my entire fucking life.
Oh yeah. Let's talk about the gatekeeping.
Okay.
Not being enough.
That's a good one.
My entire fucking life. I was fired by my first commercial agent. And before he fired me, he was like, I don't know how to book you because you're not Asian enough and you're definitely not Black enough. And that goes back to shit when I was a kid hanging out with you know, I grew up, my dad's side of the family, everyone's out here. We're all American, right? And my uncles moved out here to LA too in the 70s. So my mom is the only Vietnamese relative I have here in the States.
Oh.
So everything Vietnamese came from her and only her and her culture. You know, when I went to Temple and we celebrated New Year, and you know, she was a chef too, Keith. The Westin Bonaventure in downtown. And so, you know, and then I have like 500 cousins in fucking Vietnam, and my mom swears they're all taller than me. That's awesome. Same. But so I would hang out with the black side of my family, and so no one knew. Like, I was always getting shit, and like you really didn't know like that I was black until like we started playing sports and shit, and they're like, oh, like okay, because I used to get off. Like, I played football in college. I was very athletic. I played sports my entire life and shit. And then that's when people, but other than that though, it just to get my head or just to troll just kids or whatever, I was never black enough, right? So I was experiencing that at the same time, and then I really didn't like get along with like the Asian kids growing up in high school because I didn't fit into their circle. Because you know,
that's
you
a
know,
whole other clique.
That's a whole other clique. The culture, the Asian clique growing up in high school, and you were not fucking let in, and I could not culturally, because I was just a fucking dumb jock, and they couldn't. We beefed. Like the guy didn't get along with the guys. You know, whatever. You know, and so I wasn't Asian enough that way. So that started like very young, and is spilled over now into my career, which I find like is this something that you know it's just going to be a lifelong thing.
As an adult, as a grown adult in a career that's not based on your look as a model, is that weird that that you have to endure that?
Not necessarily. I mean, I've come to just accept, like, at this point, you know, we all become adults. Like, who gives a shit? I don't.
Yeah.
You know, but then when it came back again, like my first commercial agent, I was so proud of landing for commercial agent. I started going on these like wacky ass auditions and shit. I'm like, why am I in a room with like 80-year-old Asian dudes and shit? Or like, why am I in a room, like whatever? And he didn't know it. So then it came back. Yeah. Like, oh.
Like the agent, I get, like, I don't really want to excuse any sort of weird racism or actually like short-sightedness as an agent, you know, but if he's trying to
I know what you mean.
If he's trying to sell like, oh, like I have a candidate who's black, or I have a candidate who's Asian, and somebody's like, well, that's not the look we're going for. I get the bind that's in, but
me too. And you know, and that's Hollywood. That's the business, right, Maria? I mean, the reality of it is that 95% of Hollywood and the casting directors and agents, you know, the mainstream, or you know, they're white, and you have boxes, and they need to stick you in these boxes. And if there's no box to stick you in, then you got to create your own fucking box. And I think that's the fucking beauty of comedy, bro. That's the beauty of what we do.
Yeah.
Is that you and me, Maria, get to carve out our fucking lane. And create our box. And then one day there'll be a fucking box there.
Yeah, because Lord knows we didn't have no boxes growing up. You remember trying to select what race and ethnicity you were for the public school testing? You're like, there's only one box, but I need two. I'm going to just write it in.
I wore the wrong shirt tonight. I just realized that now. I have another shirt that's from my own merch, and it's checkbox other. And it's what I always checked on everything, because I'm like, you know what? Not just because like, hey, I'm 12% and I'm special. That's not what but I was like, fuck you for asking. That's why.
Right.
Oh my God.
Exactly.
I always said fuck you for asking. And maybe there's a world where I'd like to think there's a world where they're asking because they're like, listen, we want to try and figure out who's doing what, who's having issues with what, and we want to rectify that. I'd like to believe that. A, I don't think that's the case. And B, I don't think that's the world we want to live in. I don't want to live in a world where it's like, here's all the different races, here's all the things we're doing to make them work together. I want to live in a world where it's like, it doesn't matter what race you are, because we're all assuming you're something, a complicated version of like a combination of everything. And we're just, well, that's great. That's not a problem. And we don't even like, why should we care? Let's just move on.
Yeah.
It's all social construct. And it's all social construct anyway.
It is. And and that's just for, you know, paperwork and for like government and school and work. But then it's of course, then you still have like the social aspect of it. And like when someone like wants to come up and be like, oh my God, what are you? Like,
people
really? That's the first
yeah.
question. Like, none of your goddamn business, you know?
You know how many times I get Filipino all the time, Maria?
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, because, and like, that's great. You know, I don't mind that I get mistaken. I love my ethnic ambiguity. I think it's amazing, you know, but like for me, and then because the social norms and everything are changing, I used to ask that to people that I wasn't sure, like if they look mixed, I'd be like, oh, there's my people. Because if I'm in a room full of white kids and there's like a couple of mixed kids or a couple like an Asian or something, like I asked because for me it was a bonding kind of like experience. Like, oh, let me find my group because I'm sure as hell I'm not gonna fit in with these little skinny white girls. Mm-hmm. And what sucks is even like growing up, even though as diverse as LA is, again, not only I was never Asian enough for the Asian girls, never Mexican enough for the Mexican girls. And on top of that, I was a fat kid. So even if I found a group of Asian girls, like with the Asian girls, not only did I have to be like, I was in the same advanced classes, like the whatever, but I was a fat kid. So of course, like all the Asian girls that were like, they were like skinny and pretty. It's just always stacked up. Like I was always the odd one out, whether it was because of my gender, because of my ethnicity, because of my size. And then I was a weird kid, like I was a nerd. And so it just like, I was like, you know what? So I made it a point never to fit in anywhere after a while. And then, you know, I went kind of cliche with it, with the like goth thing and the whatever. But
you did the goth.
Oh, I'm still a goth.
I can see it still.
My earrings and my Winifred Sanders shirt. Like, where's your
Morrissey shirt?
Oh my God, every Mexican loves Morrissey. Like, who doesn't love Morrissey? If you grew up in LA, you, especially in the 80s and 90s, you loved Morrissey. And it's a weird correlation. They even had studies about it on some like BuzzFeed thing where the correlation between Chicanos and Morrissey. It's so funny. But anyway, totally. It's not a phase, Mom. Okay, it's not a phase.
So, I'd like to give the benefit of the doubt also to the people asking, like, oh, what's your ethnicity? That they're actually curious, or they're actually trying to like, you know, edify themselves. But I think really what's happening is they're probably like, I don't know, like I'm Sean Porter's agent right now, and I don't know where to place you. And you need to give me context. You need to say, like, oh, your funny accent is because of this reason. Your weird look, your skin tone that I'm not used to is because of this reason. You need to give me that reason so I can move on and not have that question blaring in my head, you know. But as comedians, though, that's sort of like territory that we have to maneuver, right? Because we need to, whenever we have a bit, or if there's an issue with our identity or a look, you have to address that question in the room. If there's a bit and it poses a question to the audience, or it poses some sort of rebuttal to the audience, you need to address that so that you can get past what they're thinking and move on with your material.
Right.
And you can control the sort of narrative in your comedy. Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's the whole bit. That's the whole joke routine.
I was gonna ask you that, Maria. Like so the first top of my set, I gotta address it. Like get that out of the way every single time and talk about that. You know, when you know we were talking about, you know, identity, you know, and how important that is. Depend on whatever, you know, you don't want to be a one-note comic, but at the same time, if we're working a room and the majority of the room is usually going to be white or whatever, especially if you're on the road, that's something that you have to address and get out right away. And I don't know if you realize this, Keith, but like I remember the first 3 or 4 shows I did with Liar Comedy, I would do my Beige and shit, and I'm always working new material, but I would do it off the top. And then sooner as I got more, you guys knew who I was. Then after that, I was like, okay, I don't have to do this material anymore.
We also did
because
yeah.
Because it just and it sucked. So you guys didn't care, but I felt like, okay, now they know who I am.
Yeah.
So I don't have to do that material. But every time, I was going to ask you, Maria, like, do you feel like every time you get on a stage, you have to be like, almost like, hi, I'm Maria, I'm this and this, and,
That's my first joke, is addressing my name, Maria Della Ghetto, because, and this was brought to my attention because I had a booker tell me that, like, ask me, is that your real name? And I always bring this up, and I just want to make it clear. I always do this every time. I'm not talking smack about him. It's just I'm addressing what came from it. But he was like, when I look at you, when I talk to you, I don't see ghetto. And he was like,
who's this?
Speaking,
name names.
No, because I'm not trying to talk smack. It was very insightful. So he was like, you sound like you could have gone to Harvard. And I'm like, oh, okay. And at first I was like, dang, because my name has been an issue from the get-go.
You sound like you're trying to get laid. Yeah.
No. He hit you with the, you speak so well.
Exactly.
He hit you with that shit.
Exactly. And so I was like, but because, all this talk about my name, no one's going to take me seriously, yada, yada, yada. I was like, hold up. Before I even consider anything else, why? Because I'm from the ghetto, I have to talk a certain way or speak a certain way. Like, plenty of people from the ghetto go to Harvard.
I know.
Plenty of people, are from the hood who are, whatever. And so I was like, you know what? But it brought to my attention that if I'm talking about certain things and I don't immediately, like, I have to preface my ethnicity, because if I talk about certain things, assuming that people know I'm Latina or Filipina, it could go wrong, because they're gonna be like, what's this bitch talking about? She's, she's not, they might assume I'm something else. So I have to clarify, because then it might come off racist. It might come off, insensitive. And that's one of the pitfalls of like being ethnically ambiguous, is like, they don't know. So I got to preface every time.
Yo, it's fucking crazy that we're still doing this. So one of my closest friends, he's vice president of Golden State Warriors. He lives up in the Bay Area. Okay, his name is Nana Ya. Okay, this guy's from Ghana. Okay, my boy is black. Okay, he's black, but he was interviewing for the vice president gig, and he's interviewing with the head HR lady. It was like one of 8 interviews, and at the end of it, they hit him with the, wow, like, you are so articulate and you speak so well. And like, he called me, and this was back in April. He called me. He's like, yo, they're still doing this shit. Like, I got hit with that same thing. Like, they are still doing this shit. And he's the vice president of Golden State, where he's an executive of the 49ers.
Just out of, like, I'm just trying to pull something out, like, out of thin air. Like,
right. No, right.
Trying to like, just take a stab at an excuse here. But Sean, is he American, or is he from another country?
Yeah, no. He is
meaning
first
like
generation. Like, his parents moved from Ghana, so he is American born.
He's American born. Okay, then that's
right.
Definitely a racist question. But because I said something similar to somebody.
Yeah, he didn't have an accent.
Recently with an accent, and I was like, oh, your English is very fucking good for your for your, like, because he's a recent immigrant. And I'm like, oh my God, your English,
right.
Like, you know English, but like Arnold Schwarzenegger still does not get it. Like, you have it so much better, so like sometimes I can see where that's like misconstrued, but
well, it's in the context, right? So like, we know, like Marie and I know, like, we know
when it's the color of your skin and not the sound of your voice.
Right.
We know that when a white person's heart is in the right place. It's like all about context. Like, you were well-meaning. It was obvious, like, these guys, what I mean? So you're complimenting this person. I've done that too, Keith. I've done that too. It's like, wow, your English is amazing. Because we're
still unlearning all the colonization. We're still decolonizing. Right. So for sure.
We're children of immigrants. So anytime I meet or come across an immigrant who's out here and trying to learn it and new, and I try to compliment them overly. Right. So we know when your heart's in the right place.
Right.
Yeah. And the point of this episode isn't to give any excuses to colonizers, but I'd like to think that somewhere there's one island
wrong.
That there's one island with one race and that's adjacent to another island with another race, and they're experiencing the same thing. Like, oh, these people come over here, and we're like, oh, and they thought it was offensive. You know, I like to think that just humans are just not very great at communicating, and they screw up from time and again.
Yes, and then awkwardness and uncomfortableness. Yeah. Maria, let me ask you this question. I'm sorry, real quick, Maria. You know? Can you tell? Like, I can tell when I'm with a group of white people or a white person. I can tell when that white person is not comfortable around people of color. Like, can you tell that? Can you spot that in a white person? Like, I can immediately spot when a white person has
know what the tell is.
Friends,
I want to know what
no
the tell
brown
is.
friends. Like, I can spot it. Like, ooh, you are
awkward. You know what? Yeah, because they have an air of like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, it's
a survival tactic that we pick up, Keith, as people like.
No, I mean, it is in a way, because we have to know, like, we just know immediately, like the first like 10 seconds, we know immediately how we're gonna talk to this person. Am I gonna talk like, yo, what's good? Like, I went down and then blah blah, or am I gonna be like, oh yeah, no, absolutely, I went down to the farmer's market, I got my little organic avocados. Like, we know. I know if I'm talking about the farmer's market with this person or if I'm talking about El Super, you know what I'm saying? Because
it's within the first 5 or 10 minutes of meeting that white person, I can tell. But then conversely though, Keith, I can tell within the first 5-10 minutes where I'm like, oh, okay, he's cool. Yeah, like he gets like,
he's invited to the barbecue.
He has, right, or like, oh, I could tell he has black friends, or has grew up around people of color, or is comfortable around.
Yeah, you know what,
like,
you're right.
I can tell immediately, like, oh, all right.
Do you think that it's a matter of, okay, so what you're describing, because I'm thinking about, I'm somebody who's always sort of rejected tribalism, like from day one. Whenever some kid in the schoolyard came up to me and said, oh, the cool kids are doing this, I was like, fuck cool kids. You're an idiot. Eat shit.
Right.
Get out of my fucking face. Like, from day one. So I always rejected tribalism and always was just like, hey, who's cool? Let's hang out. So what you're saying, like, are you identifying those people? Or are you identifying the people who are sort of like, maybe of one race and pro other races, et cetera? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a difference between non-racist and anti-tribalist. You see what I'm saying?
Well, it's right. No, I see what you're saying. And it's not the tribal. I think it's just the awkwardness of there are so many I guess it's white folks who grew up in these homogenous environments their entire life, and it shows once you get out of college and then get into the adult world. It just shows. It's a weird thing to explain.
Oh my God. No, I have a perfect example. I worked with a very, very, like, she grew up in upstate New York and she bought a house with her husband in fucking Atwater, or I should, whatever, total gentrifier. And she had been in LA for 12 years at this point. And I could just tell that this woman had no friends that were people of color, like real friends, because there's friends, they're acquaintances. And like,
right.
But anytime I saw Instagram pictures, anytime I saw friends of hers that came to our shop, because she was my, I worked with her, all the same carbon copy, stock photo, Walmart white girl on the pic in the frame. You know what I'm saying? Like, super basic. And I'm like, to those women, I'm like, the only brown person constantly in her life was her nanny, who was Salvadorian. So that's the type of shit that you can spot, because anytime too many brown people or black people came in and they weren't being basically like whitewashed, if they weren't whitewashed, I could see her manners. She was uncomfortable. You could just see it. Like, You've been here 12 years in LA, bitch, and you still don't know how to talk to brown people? Like, what?
Right.
And it's that kind of shit is just like, it's obvious.
Keith, it's, you know, it ends up bubbling up to like incidents, like the Karens who end up like touching a black woman's hair.
Oh, God.
Like, or, you know, or you're so well spoken, like that's what ends up, that's how you can, it's those folks that you can tell are just either awkward, uncomfortable around people, and they've never been around folks, and they end up having little fucking incidents like that. I can tell you, for white guys, the white guys who wear flip-flops all year long in any fucking event, flip-flops and khakis and khaki shorts. Those are you show me that white guy, I will show you a Republican who has never had any people of color.
Those are the ones that say, I don't see color. Get out of here.
I'm not doing this because I'm not trying to pull I don't see color thing.
He's playing a devil's advocate. Shocking.
No, I want to tell you flat out
that every white guy ever.
I do not own a pair of flip-flops. I refuse to fucking wear flip-flops. I will either go barefoot or in sneakers, and I think flip-flops on men are the most disgusting, weird thing that you can possibly do. And I fucking love your point, Sean, and I agree with it 1000%.
It's those white guys, you know what I'm talking about. Those dudes all season long.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ralphie May had a great bit about
with their hands on their hips, like, oh.
Ralphie May had a great bit about guys with flip-flops and how they're losers and they can't, like what if you have to do something and like I can't run, I'm in flip-flops, I'm sorry.
Well, if you're Mexican, you can definitely run in chanclas. That's what they're called. And it's a skill, let me tell you.
Unless you're Asian or Mexican and you're wearing chanclas or fucking sliders
or chinelas.
Right. Flip-flops, I only wear flip-flops if there's water around. I have to be.
Flip-flops are worse than New Balances. Like, let's face it.
Oh my God.
The old man New Balance.
So you only wear them at home. Is chanclas, flip-flops, chinelas, those are house slippers, and that's it. Or the beach. That's it. You get one pass to the beach.
That's it. Water. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you if there was if there's one specific ethnicity in your background that you most identify with, even if you're even if it's 50-50, are you a indica dominant, what's your deal? Like, tell me how, is there something just from even your own personal family culture that makes you feel like you're dominant with one over the other? Maria, we'll start with you.
Okay. Yes. I do have like more a dominant side that I identify with, because my mom and me were like, it was me and her for the first 5 years when I was a kid. We came here from the Philippines and my dad was still in the military. So he was still deployed off and on till I was about 5, almost 6, I think. And yeah, she spoke to me in Tagalog and English. We ate Filipino food, like she cooked, fish, rice, and vegetables majority of the time. All the cultural stuff, all the traditions or whatever, it was from my mom. She was, home most of the time. But yeah, that's why like I had that self-hatred and racism towards Latinos, because they're the ones that teased me growing up, and they're the ones that, called me chinita and all these things. And then, but, not knowing that, like, when we went to my grandpa's house on Sundays for pozole, that was very much a Mexican thing. And we had tamales on Christmas. So I did have like Mexican culture and traditions, but because I was closer to my mom and whatnot, I definitely identified more. Like I would be like, I'm Filipino. Obviously as a kid, because that's very common too. I learned, like that self-hatred of like, I'm not really Mexican, but I'm Mexican type of thing. And then, you unlearn that. And, now I'm very much proud of being Latina and realize I had a lot more Latino like ties than I realized and all that. So, yeah. And I spoke Tagalog. Like I speak Tagalog a little bit more than Spanish. I understand both about the same, but speaking it is a little bit more difficult. So, yeah, that's where I stand on the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Sean?
I similarly to Maria, you know, growing up, I got my Vietnamese culture directly from my mom. You know, I came from a broken home. My parents split up. I think I was like 6 or 7, and I have 3 older sisters, and my oldest sister was already like off to college and shit. Like when my parents split up, so I tell people, I was really like kind of the only child because there was such a huge gap between my sisters. Like my sisters were all siblings; they were all a couple years apart from each other. And then you have me, that's like a 10-year gap. Because obviously I was a fucking accident and a Hail Mary for my dad to have a fucking boy, one last attempt. So I grew up like almost like an only child. And so when they split up, you know, that's when I was going back and forth. And so like, you know, I was always with, you know, my black side of my family, but everything at home, even though my mom was a chef, all we ate was Vietnamese food and Asian food, and we'd go to temple, and our New Year was bigger than the American New Year, and she tried her best to, you know, bring all of that culture and instill it, you know, in me. Was I ever ashamed of being Asian? I mean, depending on the circumstance, you know, because when I was growing up in Silver Lake, when it was just Latin population, it was like gay and cholos, and you know, then I grew up with a lot of Mexican friends in Silver Lake. You know, I was like Chinito number 1, right? That was my name, playing baseball and all of that, right? And then hanging out with the Mexican culture, I stuck out like a sore thumb. And then I hang out with the black side of family, and I was the Asian kid, and I stuck out like a sore thumb. Mm-hmm. So it was always a thing to where they try to use that to tease me or bully me about being Asian. And so there are a few times when I would, like, you know, come home just, you know, upset and hating that part of it. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't all the time. It was very few and far between. And then as I got older in like high school and then college, and then all that shit became null and void. And then I started really, like, I took the effort to learn the Vietnamese culture where my mom is from. And like, I'm still on that journey. Like, I haven't even been back to Vietnam yet, but you know, I was, because of fucking COVID, I was supposed to, but like Vietnam's like off the fucking chain now. And I'm like in touch with my cousins there. And there's like a Vietnamese community, like on Instagram, and all these young artists and shit are doing music and all that stuff. I'm doing a show. I'm doing like, I'll be doing like a virtual show for what was like a Vietnamese media company. And they're doing like comedy and music and all of that. And like, I'm like going on this journey. And no, I take pride in it, because then, you know, you go off to college and then you start studying all this stuff, and you're like, oh, see, I mean, like, no, it's not. No, these crackers are wrong. We've been on the right side of things this entire fucking time. Are you kidding me? We're fucking Martians. So I always like doing that too. That's another thing that I do. I like you said, like code switching. Like, I'll go and be Asian when I need to be, you know what I mean? and then be black when I need to be, but like proudly do it. And of course, always winking and nod and joke about it. Yeah. But it's interesting, man. And then, you know, when it comes to like the comedy, I found too, and I don't know if Maria has the same issue, where I'll have jokes that will get chuckles in a white audience, but I fucking kill in a black crowd.
Right.
Like I used to do this bit like last year where, you know, I talk about, you know, racism is so American that if you're really good at it, they built you a fucking statue. Like, that's how racist we are. Like, talking about Confederate statues, right? Like, and then I'd have the premise about, you know, being the ultimate participation trophy. Then I'd tie that in and shit, being a participation trophy, Confederate statues, right? And then we get chuckles. You know, I did it Flappers. I got chuckles, you know, but I did the improv where the crowd was, you know, was black, majority black, and it fucking crushed. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if Maria, if you have actual sets and jokes depending on the crowd, but I definitely do.
You know, I don't know. I mean, you know what? Yeah, I guess because you read the crowd and yeah. Because if I have like I had a show, because I've only done like a couple of live shows and then I feel like Zoom comedy is a little different because it's some of the stuff it's like online oriented. So there's not a lot of
more monologue,
I guess, of that in there. But I do notice like with like I did a show recently and it was mainly Latinos, like specifically Mexican. And I did more jokes that pertain to being Latina, because they'll get it, like they'll get the whatever, like it's just they identify more. So, and then of course, if I can't really say I've had like a huge Asian crowd, to be perfectly honest. But
I'm so that's why I'm so looking forward to this. Yeah, these shows I'm coming up because I've always wanted to work in front of Asian crowds, but I'm sorry.
It varies.
No, yeah. I mean, but we're comedians, so you learn to read the room and you just know like what kind of comedies, you just kind of have a feeling of like, okay, this is probably going to hit better in this room versus this or whatever.
Right, because the thing we were talking about, like we have to learn how to be culturally bilingual, right? That's one thing that we have to do that white people don't necessarily have to do.
No,
like one of the things
code switching.
I always
and not just code switching in terms of your language, in terms of the content of your language.
Mm-hmm.
Right, the content. Yeah, like the thing that always kills me, especially over the last year with this fucking crazy fucking year that we've all gone through and survived, is I'll do a show and I see these black and brown comics like just pouring their fucking heart out on stage. Like, cause how can't we talk about this shit?
Yeah.
Like I had to talk about this shit. I had to talk about Confederate statues. Like, cause like white people are fucking losing their minds over this shit. Like I have to talk about this. And you just see these black and brown comics just pouring their hearts and just talking about some real deep shit. And then the next comic comes on, he's like, hey, how about that Honda helpful guy, huh? Am I right? It's just like fuck. It's like we just hit him with this fucking material. And the next guy comes on, he's just like, oh, hey, that fucking pizza delivery guy, am I right? I'm like, shit.
That's 100.
It's
yeah.
So it's like, how can we not like? And then that comes with the whole identity thing. But it's like it's all identity. It's all identity. It's just, I think the blind spot white people have is that they don't realize that being mainstream gives you, dare I say, privilege of the freedom of being an individual. Mm-hmm. Whereas opposed to when we go on there, as groups or marginalized groups, we are monolithic, right? We are paired together. We are grouped. Whereas white people have the freedom of individuality. But what they realize is that their issues are white issues. They're white identity issues. White people just call them issues because white people have been the mainstream of this country for so long. Right? So then you hear all these other voices, and that's, the thing about social media now. And one of the great things, it's fucking awful, but then good. And I keep going back and forth. I'm like, fucking social media thing.
Don't say TikTok.
But no, I wasn't. What I was gonna say is one of the things, the great things about social media is the fact that so many voices, so many different perspectives now, so many people I'm learning about that I probably would have never learned about. All these Native American activists and journalists and people of color who are out there doing the thing, and so many different voices now.
There are some good people on TikTok. I was just giving you shit. I thought you were going to lead up to that and like drop a TikTok.
No, I don't even have a TikTok, to be honest with you. I don't want Chinese spyware on my phone. I'm like,
you already do. They have every other app.
I know, but I'm resisting as long because it's just I don't have enough time in the day. That's like a full-time job.
What a great way to end the show with racial stereotyping. Right after that whole.
Are we done already? Damn, you're right.
Well, we're towards the end of the show, and guys, here's the thing: we've reached the point of the show where you two, you get to name your episode. So, Yeah, this is where we have to put our heads together.
Colonizers weren't that bad.
Which Asian is it?
Which Asian is it? And ethnically ambiguous duo, or called the Sriracha Barbecue Show. I don't know. Well, food reference. I don't know.
What if you just
Sriracha and lumpia?
Sriracha and lumpia.
What about if you talked about all the different shades of beige?
50 Shades of Asian.
Oh,
50 Shades of Beige, pretty fucking good.
I like it.
That is good
because it even includes you, Keith.
It includes everybody who's got who's just listen. It's not all about white people, I
gotta find that.
We know that.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's do that one. 50 Shades of what? Brown or 50 Shades of Beige? 50 Shades of Beige. Let's do it.
I like that one. Yay me.
50 Shades of Beige. Whatever. That is right.
Oh my God. That was funny.
God.
Yeah.
Guys, you two are too funny, and that's why I had you on. Because I need it too funny.
Appreciate you.
So real quick before we go, I'll let you.
You can play this on Black History Month and Asian Heritage Month.
There it is. API Heritage Month, baby.
This is going.
You can replay it.
I'm broadcasting this around the clock just to get street cred.
You got clout, Keith. You got clout, bro.
Mm-hmm. At non, getting booked as a white comedian is getting tougher. So I'm gonna like. Oh, yes, you didn't see my podcast. So real quick, guys, is there anything you want to plug? Maria, again, we'll start with you. Plug away. Plug everything you got.
Yes. June 17th, I'm going to be in Ocean Beach, Rassel House.
Okay.
So we're doing a show there. I think it's ladies' night. Mm-hmm. And I'm very excited because apparently this is like a pro wrestling venue. So there's always like pro wrestling going on. I grew up on Lucha Libre. So yeah. So there's that. Yeah, And then I have another show down in Hillcrest on June 19th. Yeah. June 17th, Rassel House in OB. June 19th, Hillcrest. I don't know the venue yet, but you can find me on Instagram and my link trees in my bio where I have all my stuff listed. Mm-hmm. It's Maria de la Ghetto, and all platforms, even TikTok.
Put your handle in the info.
Okay, so Maria de la Ghetto, at me, and then follow my TikTok because I do creepy videos that I haven't done in a while, but I'm gonna do again. Don't worry, because I'm still a goth chick. It's not a phase. Like, it's not a phase. I'm just saying. Gotcha. But yeah, that's all I got.
Awesome, Sean, plug. You need to plug just as much shit as Maria. You gotta hold up your end.
Yes. Well, you can. No,
you have to be the overachieving Asian.
No, that I've been a failure in my mom's eyes for years now, Maria. So,
well, that's why we're friends.
You could right, exactly. You could find me starting June 15th once all this shit opens back up, hosting every Tuesday at Flappers in Burbank. Details and times soon to be announced. But I will be hosting shows Tuesdays, and you can find me wherever you find or see or hear a Liar Comedy show, because I'm all up in their shit. Liar Comedy.
True. It is true. What about, you got a Twitter, right?
Oh yeah, you can find me at Instagram. I am Sean Porter. I think that is it. Yes, Sean, SEAN, because I'm not a fucking psychopath. SHAWN bullshit. So I am Sean Porter, or Twitter at I am Sean M Porter, M standing for middle initial Michael.
It's less complicated than it sounds, guys. We'll put
it is. You'll fix that shit. You'll fix that shit in post.
There's only two ways to spell Sean. You'll get it right the first or the second time. So
we'll fix everything about Sean in post. So
in post, please do.
That's been our show, everybody. I'd like to thank our wonderful guests, Sean Porter and Maria de la Ghetto.
Hey.
I've been your host, Keith Graber. Check back next month for another episode of Everybody's a Comedian. See you later.